My guest this week is Kyleen King. Kyleen is a session musician, string arranger, and a live performer based out of Portland, Oregon. With a keen attention to detail and an intuitive ear, she's able to find exactly what a song needs and then create the part. She's the violist and backup singer for Grammy-winning artist Brandi Carlile's touring band, and Kyleen is the first call violist arranger for Portland's top recording studios and has recorded on projects with My Morning Jacket, First Aid Kit, the Decemberists, and many more. Her desire to serve the song above all else, to be well prepared, and to have a laugh are defining elements of her career. And Patterson Hood of the Drive-By Truckers says, Kyleen King is one of my favorite musicians on the planet. A fantastic viola player, plus her string arrangements are brilliant. She sings great, is a total badass, and a very cool person too. And it is my great pleasure to welcome to Revolutions Per Movie, Kyleen King. Hi, Kyleen.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
So good to see you. We're going to talk about 20 Feet From Stardom, the 2013 film directed by Morgan Neville. I've seen you in the studio work magic out of the air. I've also seen you be in a Dylan all synthesizer band. So I know your range is vast. But what is the pressure or feeling like when you have somebody who wants something? Because music sometimes is really hard to talk about in specifics if you can't score, if you can't really figure out what you're wanting. What does that feel like?
So like somebody asks me for, like as an example, a string arrangement for a song, and I'm like, strings just really don't fit on this, and how can I make this work? I'm really scared because that's where my insecurity will come right up to the front and be, I feel like a fraud and be like, well, I don't know. Now I'm just like, I feel like I'm throwing putty at the wall and hoping that it sticks. And I kind of hate what I'm doing when it's not just a immediate, like, yes, I know exactly what's going to work for this. So it's very uncomfortable, and it's pretty much always going to work out though. People are usually satisfied with a string part. And so it's gone really well, but that doesn't change the fear. The fear is always there. Anytime you're creating something that is subjectively valuable, it's terrifying. So yeah, you're putting yourself out there, even if it's not your human body, it's not your voice, it's your mind, it's your ideas, and your identity is attached to that, and your financial livelihood is attached to, does this work or not?
Right. And also, I just find that in the little bit of work I've done like this, sometimes people talk in abstractions. I mean, even in this film at one point, someone was talking about, they want more air in their vocal presentation. It's got to be hard to unlock that specific energy that someone's looking for.
I feel like maybe just because I spent my whole life around different kinds of musicians, people know the language very well and know how to use it, and people who have no idea how to talk about it, that I've just gauged from various words and approaches to discussing what people want, how to read somebody. And the more I know somebody, the better it gets. But I don't know. I mostly, whenever people are throwing things at me like that, all I can go with is what I know. And I'm like, swagger, this is what swagger means to me, and I'm going to play that. If that doesn't work for you, you're going to have to come up with a different word to tell me what else you want. But that's ultimately all I got. I can't make something up I don't have. Right. So, yeah.
And have you done a lot of big touring before the Brandi Carlile tour?
I had toured with the Heartless Bastards, which is a southern kind of roots rock band from Austin. We did tours in 2015 and 2016, and that was the first time I had been paid to go on tour.
Right.
My bands in Portland had gone out on runs, and we were paying to go on tour, basically. But that was the first time professionally I was doing it. And then I had a little lull from 2016 to 2018 where I wasn't touring and trying to find touring work and meeting with different bands, and just wasn't connecting. And then I got hired for Brandi in 2018. But the touring with Brandi, just when I started, we were in theaters, and where we just ended, I was in stadiums. So I was there for her mega lift.
Wow.
And it was crazy to see the difference.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the scope changes, and also what you have to do as a performer has changed in terms of expectations. Are you expected to do certain things to create a visual presence as well as a musical presence in something as big as a stadium?
For me, no. I love the background role
Uh-huh.
because I just do me. If she wants something done, she'll ask, but the pressure is on her. It's her name and her having to change a little bit for the bigger audience. She does that a little, but pretty much our show hasn't changed. Like the way we are on stage and the music we put on has been the same from the theater to the stadium, maybe different lights and stuff, but musically it's just kind of the same.
A giant animatronic monster comes out now and fire.
Not yet. We didn't
Just
go that far. We're like, no, just hear some music.
here we go. Like just giant fire explosions next to you.
I would love that.
In terms of rehearsals and staging, how long does it take for you to get something like that onto the road? How many weeks are you usually working on something like that?
Well, Brandi doesn't rehearse very much. So when we would have a new lighting package or, some new production, we would rehearse for maybe a week before and go out, but we don't really rehearse otherwise. This organization never put that much time into rehearsal. So it's always just kind of last minute scrambling for everybody involved.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I've heard of other bands that actually rehearse for 3 weeks, a month, and then get their stuff together and go out. And I've never had the luxury. It's always been last minute cramming with this band, and it's a lot. It's taxing, but
Yeah.
everybody in this band is capable of doing it. We can all keep up with what the demand is.
Yes.
So it's worked well, and why would you change it if that's working?
Yeah.
It just depends. It depends on the music, depends on the people.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have more practice because what it can work, but it's more like you don't really know each other when you're not, like when a mistake comes, you can train wreck, and we don't know each other well enough from spending hours in rehearsal to know kind of how to handle that. So I would like to go in without the fear of thinking like I just barely got this and feeling like this is comfortable,
Well, I was wondering, is there a certain point where you're able to go on autopilot being on stage? Like, do you ever zone out, or are you constantly aware of what's going on?
Well, with me, I'm a string player in a quartet. We play off charts. So I'm playing the same parts every night. I'm not improvising, I'm not soloing. So I go into a mode when I'm on stage, and I'm just like, yeah, I know this. Like on a tour, when Brandi's gone out for a few weeks, we get into a zone, and then we're not working as hard, right? Like beginning pressures of, oh, we're all back out here again, and blah, blah. We can sink in, and then sometimes get a little creative and like, oh, let's do this a little different.
Right.
But yeah, no, I step into a headspace for sure when I'm on stage with her.
Do you have a pre-show ritual at all?
No.
You don't warm up or anything like that, or
no. We rehearsal is always in sound check with Brandi. So sound check is 2.5 hours, maybe something like that. And or not always that long, but if we're gonna run something, it's in sound check, and then we all have dinner, and then we just go onto the stage. And there's no like huddling, pre-gaming. It's always like right before we go on stage, everybody's like, "Oh, hey, have a great show," and then we go play the show, and then we're done.
I ask anyone who is on like a larger tour on the show about it, because whenever anyone's picked a music narrative film, like they always have the pre-show huddle. They're always like, all right,
Yes.
let's get together. The dancers are here. Everyone, who's going to lead the prayer and this and that. And everyone I talked to was like, no. Yeah, I just like walk out and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Like I haven't seen you all day. All right, let's go. It's just such a funny trope in movies.
It's a funny trope. I think we have done that a few times, and it's the big show, right? Like I remember we did that when we played the Hollywood Bowl last year in October. Joni Mitchell was coming out to play with us.
Oh my gosh.
End of the long year, and
Yeah.
we did Brandi did the talk, and I think this was around the time Ukraine war was picking. I can't remember what was going on. Something politically was going on. It must have been the war in Ukraine. And And so we had that moment, and I was like, wow, we never really do this, right? But like, I think on Saturday Night Live, we might have done like a little, you know, boost them up. But you're right.
Yeah.
Like every documentary or movie you see this huddle, or even on social media when people are doing behind the scenes videos of their tours.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you do this every night? Really? Like hands in the center. Whoa, let's go play another show. I don't know.
It's so weird. I watched a King Crimson documentary, and it was like Robert Fripp has a circle, and they all go, whoa, and they kind of do it, and you're like, that seems so counterintuitive to the energy of your band. Shouldn't you all just be wearing like masks and not looking at anyone and being in darkness, and then you just go out? It's amazing. I have kind of a silly question.
Yeah.
You know, if I go see the Decemberists play or something, and they have, you know, backing people, when they're not doing anything, they kind of have to do this little sway kind of movement thing. And I'm like, is that a union thing, or is that like just like the law? Because it's like there's a certain backing performer sway that happens that I'm always like, oh, there it is. Caught it, clocked it. What time is it? All right, 40 minutes in.
Well, I'll say this, if you're conscientious how you are on stage, you'll know that if you're standing like a tree stump, that's not very fun to watch.
No.
And it's honestly not very fun to be on stage just standing with a, you know, like, I know you're waiting to do your thing, or, you know, you're just resting until it's your part, but that's not entertainment. That's not like
Right.
part of the energy of the people on stage. So I'm, as a person who does a lot of resting on stage, I'm not playing for several measures or not singing here until I jump in on backing vocals. There's movement. There's like
Right.
smiles, and there's looks at people on stage and like out in the audience. Like I'm engaged. I want
Right.
to be a part of this show always, even if I'm not doing something musically. And even when I am doing something musically, I'm moving. I want to see a performer having fun on stage. It makes you have way more fun to see them having fun. And I've heard that a number of times from audience members. They're like, you just look like you're having so much fun. And I'm like, well, I am. This is a
Right.
good time.
And it's true. Like when I saw, my parents took me to see the Stop Making Sense tour, the backing vocals and the dancing in it were like front and center. You know what I mean? And then I just recently saw the Rolling Stones, and they have a newer singer, Chanel Haynes, who came out and just killed it, right? And when the majority of the show, they're just back there, but then they had like one solo. But when it came to introducing one at the end of the show, besides Mick, Keith, and Ronnie, she got the most applause because people were connecting to her, and she was giving this thing that people are like, wow, like this is made for me. Like,
Yeah.
she probably doesn't do this every night, even though she does. And I think it was it's such a cool illusion still, you know what I mean? That like,
Absolutely.
but at the same time, it is fun. And, you know, of course you're going to want to share that.
Yes. Of everything that you deal with as a touring performing musician outside of the stage, the moments on stage where you're connecting with people musically on this same platform are wonderful despite everything else. Like I've always loved that. And I'm not somebody who eats up the stage. Personally, I like the studio more, but I love the dynamic of being in communion with musicians on stage. And you know, more even than just like entertaining the audience, I love the chemistry of what happens on stage with people when we're doing music together. And that comes across. It's really hard to fake that well. You can be a good actress and fake it, I'm sure, but I'm not faking it. There's nothing disingenuous about it when I'm on stage. There might be mechanical movements that I wouldn't do otherwise, but aside from that, I'm genuine. And I feel like everybody I'm on stage with is genuine when they're up there too. And you can read that. You can feel that from the audience, right?
Yeah. And if I moved like I did on stage in real life, you know, I'd be arrested all the time. People would be like, they'd be like, this maniac, what's going on? But yeah, you're absolutely right. So the film 20 Feet from Stardom, you know, it won the Academy Award that year. It was directed by Morgan Neville, who also did The Best of Enemies, which was about the debates with Gore Vidal, William F. Buckley, and also did Won't You Be My Neighbor about Mr. Rogers. Did you see this film when it first came out?
I did. And I loved it. And I'm so glad you picked this movie for me because I think it's my favorite documentary that I've ever seen. It's so relevant to my view in the music industry and the stories they get, the interviews that they get in that film, the music that they present, like getting these features on these backing vocalists that everybody knows the sound of and have never put a face to a name and heard the story of. I get chills. When I first watched that, I was bawling by the end, and I watched it again yesterday, and I was bawling again, reminded of how meaningful this documentary is to me. And I didn't realize how much I took from it 10 years ago or 11 years ago when it came out until I rewatched it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was really relevant to me.
Well, what did you take from it?
I took from it why I'm going into social work and mental health for musicians,
Mm-hmm.
of what this means to be in this business and to have all this talent and to have these incredible experiences and have expectations that are unmet and what it means to play different roles in the music industry that aren't just the role that you think of, like Brandi Carlile, the name, Rolling Stones, you think Mick Jagger or whatever, like you think about these singular artists, Bruce Springsteen, Stevie Wonder, all these people that are featured in that documentary. You think about them. You don't think about the other members of the band. You don't think about the crew, and you don't think about what their experiences are, what their hopes are. Like, you don't think about other talent, especially when you're looking at a background vocalist who's serving the music. You don't think about what that means as a role in music. And the honestly the damage done for people who have expectations and pressures and are trying to get something, never get it, and have all the talent in the world and still don't get it, and how difficult it is to stay in a business like this. And what you see in the documentary is people losing work as people stopped hiring backing vocalists, and you're like, what do we do? And all of this is why I'm going into social work and mental health, to be like, I want to support people. I want to support artists and musicians who are doing this, who don't have systems to help them, like structures to help them through this, even to talk through about talk through the expectations of fame and why it's so hard
Yes.
to get it and lose it, or to never get it, and all of these pressures and expectations you have in your mind. Let's just talk about it and get real about it. I'm a very much a realist, and so the music business and me don't fit in so many ways, and I know that's true for most musicians.
It's getting worse, right?
Yes.
Economically, like you said, mental health
Yeah.
wise. It's impressive to me that there's more music now than ever. People are still doing it with even more hardships. It is set up very unhealthily. If you kind of look the wrong way, it could be very harmful.
And it is very harmful, and we don't get to see much of that. And I had this realization, and I don't mean to interject this too much, but I had this realization the other day of why I think we're so resistant to thinking about the well-being of creatives and musicians. I feel like because humans are coming to music as a kind of a form of escape from life and a escape from hardship, and a joyousness of like, yes, this is what I've been waiting my whole week for, is to go to this show, right? Or to listen to this record. I don't need to also think about the well-being of the people that are creating this joy for me, that are creating this escape. I feel like there might be some kind of barrier there that's a little bit invisible, and why it's such a struggle for musicians in America in particular, in a neoliberal, capitalist system that doesn't value and support the arts financially. That uh, it just, we don't see it and we don't hear it very much. I know amongst musicians, we might talk about it privately, but it's not very publicized, like the struggles. And even when you do, you get some like harsh response. Like, well, why are you complaining about something that you love?
You're expected to grind it out, not sell out.
Yeah,
It's like all these things that are just put
yeah,
in front of you, and the standards are really, really odd still.
yeah. Still, and you're like you said, it's getting harder to find actual work. It's already been hard to find work in the music business. It's getting harder now, and therefore, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to have more social structural support, safety nets kind of support. How can we like get live workspaces and some sort of guaranteed income or grant support, or just more financial support structures if we're not going to be able to pay these musicians to pay their bills and continue to work? Can we do this with tax money or something? Like, that's really where my focus is at, and taking care of their well-being. Like you said, the music industry isn't designed for the well-being of musicians. It's
No.
designed to take advantage of musicians.
Well, this film, most of these people were working in the 60s and 70s, and they were taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
Having Darleen Love, a legend, basically be under contract by Phil Spector, having her sing lead on tracks, but giving a different name and a different visual identity than Darleen Love. They're like, we're just going to give this back to the band and put a different name on it. Her contract at one point in the 70s, finally, she's able to get out of the contract. It's sold. A couple weeks later, sold back to Phil Spector, and she's trapped.
Yeah.
She can't do
Yeah.
anything. And she's like cleaning houses in the 80s and 90s. And then all of a sudden, here's a song on the radio, one of our Christmas songs. And it's just like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is
Yeah.
not what I'm meant to be. No one as legendary as her should have had to suffer through any of that. And it's just like one of the many stories in this film that are told.
That's right. And one of the most striking moments of that is when the interviewer asks Darlene, how did that make you feel when that happened with the Phil Spector thing? She was just like, I'm really mad. I was really angry. And then you see her kind of start to cry, and you realize in that moment there was no support system for her there.
No.
There was nobody there trying to help her with this situation. It was kind of hopeless for her. And she was having all these struggles. Like, I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't sleep. I can't pay my bills. This is that moment where that person, Darlene Love, an phenomenal talent, and contributed to some of our favorite music, everyone's favorite music,
Yes.
is struggling to just keep living, honestly. That's the moment that she needed somebody to come in there and care for her and advocate for her, fight for her, and nobody did. And I'm so thankful that that moment when she was cleaning the house and heard her own song, that she stepped up for herself and was like, nah, this is me. And what you said earlier is that musicians will still make music regardless of their circumstance. They're gonna do it somehow. And that's because it's so important and we know it. And everybody knows it, and we're gonna do it, but there's a better way to do it. I fully believe we can care for artists better and still, you know, I don't know.
Well, it's just amazing that the industry has. We talk about it now with streaming and AI and how it's and just music is devalued in many ways, just like artistically and financially. But you look at this, and it was still a machine, and the people who are making the actual art in it were being devalued and not respected and not being paid and not credited. But you just couldn't touch someone at the top of the pyramid like Phil Spector. You know what I mean? They were in control.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, they felt like they also could make the transition to a front person. And then all the things that happen with that, like people saying, oh, you're too fat or you're too old or your voice isn't right for right now. It's just been like the industry has been set up in such an unfair and unflattering way to people who want to express themselves. Obviously, people get through the cracks, and there are tons of weirdos and people who are different that make music that do crack out of the system. But it's stacked against the majority of people wanting to just express themselves through music.
I think Lisa Fisher is the perfect example of that in this film. She is kind of my hero. And she's just like, my Grammys are over here on a shelf in the corner. I don't know what to do with them. And, like they keep referring to the need to have this like ego and this narcissism to be a front person
Yes.
as a solo artist. And somebody like Lisa Fisher, absolute phenomenal talent, but is not there for the game, is not there for the fame,
Yes.
is there for the moment, is there for the music and the expression and the incredible things that happen from that. And that's what I feel too. And honestly, most of us do. Like, of course, there are some musicians that are like, nope, this is my game and I'm playing this game and I'm going to win this game. But not that many of us. Most of us are reluctantly playing the game to do what we love.
And I've seen Lisa. She used to be the backing singer for the Rolling Stones for many years.
Yeah.
And I remember when Lisa was no longer in it, we were like, wait, there's Bernard. Where's Lisa? Like, we knew her name, right?
That's right.
We're like, we knew Lisa's name. We're like, oh, Lisa's so great. And then you're like, wait, I'm being ripped off. I paid good money to see.
Damn straight.
And that is the power. That person, that's why they need to be a household name. And the great thing about this film is it did, for the first time, put a face on so many people, whether they were new artists that were starting to do work in the industry when this film was made, to people who were, like maybe somebody was in the iCats and, their story was really interesting because they're like, we were super sexualized and we were, told like we needed to just be provocative and we had to wear provocative outfits, much different story than other people. But it was fascinating. The one thing that is funny about the documentary is that sometimes I feel like some of the people like Mick Jagger or Bruce Springsteen, sometimes I get it's a little clunky what they're trying to put across. And sometimes dismissive. Like Mick Jagger's like, yeah, it'd be fun to sing blah, 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 blah for a while, but that would get boring. And you're like, I don't get this out of here. You know what I mean? Like, get back to the people. And even the way that they brought in Mary to sing Gimme Shelter, they're just like, yeah, it'd be cool if we had a female vocal on this. Just get someone. They get her in the middle of the night. She said she's got her curlers in her hair and her night robe. And
think about that experience for that singer.
I know.
That's the expectation is you have to get up out of bed and come in and do this on our terms, on our timeline. You are expected to show up and deliver this. And when they solo up that vocal, rape, murder, I'm covered in chills and I cry every time. That third line, when it cracks, it kills me. It's always killed me. I first heard that song in the movie Adventures in Babysitting.
Oh, wow. Amazing. That's so out of context.
Oh, I know. But like, I heard that vocal.
Right.
And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't give a crap about the rest of the song. But when I watched that movie as a kid and that voice came in, I was like, what is this? And then they feature it in this documentary. And you get to hear that soloed up vocal and hear the story about how she was tired and that she has her curlers in and she comes in and her voice cracks because she's tired. But she's giving it her all. She's like, I'm gonna give it to these guys. I'm gonna show them what I can do. And she just crushes that vocal.
It's so great because she does a couple of them with Mick, and then she does to go like, I'm gonna show them. I'm gonna blow their minds.
That's right.
And I'm sure there was a disconnect. I'm sure it was just like, I mean, Mick Jagger does say it like we didn't know who she was.
Yep.
As a listener, the first time I heard it, I was giving credit to the Stones for being so brilliant to like, oh, they probably conjured this with it, like they were so smart to bring this power into the song, to make it better.
Yeah.
And, but that was like when I was, a teenager hearing it, right?
For sure.
And you're like, you take that out of that song, you take her harmony parts when she comes in.
What is that song?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And we didn't know until that documentary that that was her idea, and that was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you this gift. And do it, they even recognize what a gift it was? Like the Stones having Lisa out on tour with them. I feel like they got to know. I wouldn't want to go to that show if she was not singing. That is like
Yeah.
a magical moment to hear these voices, hear what they have to offer.
Well, even when you think of Gimme Shelter, you go to her vocal line,
Yes,
right? You don't go to
that's
Mick's.
right. Say that in the documentary. You start singing the backing vocal lines to the point that the backing vocals are the lead vocal. Right? Like,
Seeing this film and having them say that, I was like, holy shit, that is one of the most wise, eye-opening things, because it was just truth. It was so simple,
yes.
but it's absolutely
Yep.
true. You sing the backing parts, you sing the asides, you sing the call and response. There's that great part where Stevie Wonder is talking about the call and response of Ray Charles. What would the song be like this? Where he's like, oh, hey, oh, hey. You need the other part. You're singing the response with the people who are doing it.
Yeah.
So Mary Clayton was talking about how she had kind of willed herself to be a Raylette. She was like, saw him perform. It's one of the few artists her dad would let her
Right.
see.
Right. I thought that was cool.
And she was like, I'm going to be a Raylette. I want to be on that stage.
Yes.
So she got the call from Billy Preston and was on TV, and then realized she didn't really know much about physically being an entertainer, like visually arresting performer. But she talks about the one point where Ray Charles was like banging a note on the piano.
She couldn't hear the note, she said. She was like, I couldn't hear it. And he banged it out in the middle of the show. And she's like, and I never did that again.
She's like, I remembered everything from that moment
Yeah.
on. Have you ever had a moment on stage where you just, I mean, I know you have the sheet music, but it must be easy to get lost after doing so many shows and just being an autopilot at a certain point. Have you had a point where you're like, oh, I need to go get back there?
Well, I've never had a call out on stage. Nobody has ever
Bang,
banged
bang.
a note on a piano to call out one of my mistakes. But I will say this about my musicianship. I've never been good at practicing, and so I make bonehead mistakes constantly. And I feel like that's just part of, if people hire me, you know, you're not getting technical perfection as a player. You're going to get some things that I have to offer, but I am not a stunningly gifted, technically accurate player. So I make bonehead mistakes all the time, and I hate it. I hate that about myself. I'm like, oh, why don't you practice? Why can't you do this better? And I don't do it. And I've only recently realized why. I'm getting into mental health, and that has been in the way. My own stuff, my own history, my own mental health stuff has been in the way of me focusing and practicing. So I think that's why I'm headed in this direction. But on stage, when I'm in that moment, I'll tell you this, I hold on to those mistakes. Like, if a show comes up, we have to listen back to a live show, I'll be like, I know exactly what mistake is coming up. And
Oh, sure.
And Brandi, we've had some rehearsals where she'll play our live shows back to us.
Yeah.
And point out mistakes and be like, somebody's flat there. And like, I've had to, raise my hand and say, oh, that was me. She was like, I appreciate your honesty.
Oh, that's amazing pressure.
Oh boy.
Wow. Because, when I was in Got Up Voices and we played Austin City Limits, it is one of the most legendary shows of seeing a show that was like great and a train wreck. And it was dipped and weaved due to alcohol. I tell people, I say, you can see me inebriated on national television anytime you want. Just look it up. And it was so funny. We got off stage, and certain people were more drunk than others, right? Yeah. To the detriment of some people enjoying the show. And even being on stage, I was terrified. I was like, what did we just do? This was filmed. This is an iconic stage. Mm-hmm. And then the next day they send you, like, we're in our hotel room, they send us like a little rough thing to watch. And we're like, wow, I don't think anything like this has ever been captured. And we're just like, well, put it out, put it on. And then to Austin City Limits credit, they released it on DVD. They released it on double vinyl. And I'm like, you're
Wow.
crazy. It is every song is full of mistakes, but you see us rally and get it together at a certain point. But there's a good 35 minutes in the middle of this 90-minute thing where it was like no one was in control of the thing. And what you're doing, where you have somebody who's like listening and expectations are higher, I think it's kind of healthy. It's
It
like,
depends on the kind of music you're presenting. Are you trying to present a polished thing, or are you presenting an energy? And I
right,
feel like the music that you participate in with like Eyelids and other bands I've seen you with, there's an energy
right.
that I'm showing up for. It's not technical precision. It's not pop execution. It's energy.
No, but there are people who were disappointed, right? And that's the thing is like, there are certain people who are like, that was the greatest thing I've ever seen because it was fun and there was energy. And then there are people who are like, yeah, that's one of my favorite songs and it sounded not right.
It up.
You know what I mean? So
Hear
it,
that?
it is weird, like where we all come from. So I wanted to ask you about that because at one point they talked to the Waters family, a trio of family members who have been, you know, they've sung on like Pep Shop Boys songs and Neil Diamond, and they're showing like Lion King, Patti LaBelle, John Fogerty, Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, and then they're doing like voice work for Avatar, birds and stuff. But you grew up with singing with your sister.
Yeah, she's 5 years younger than me, so we weren't really connected until we became adults.
Like, did you have a sense when you were both starting to make music that like you could kind of work in a way that was a little more psychic? Or was it still a lot of hard work finding like your harmonies? Because I know that you've done work together.
Yeah, we work together in a trio now, and you're right. There's definitely a familial kind of genetic, unspoken connection, right? Like there's a language between she and I where we think the same way. And I remember as an example of growing up, we shared a bedroom, she and I. And I would be playing guitar, acoustic guitar, and like singing and writing on my bed, and on her bed, she's like playing violin. We're playing totally different things, but we're coexisting, right? Just like making chaos in the room at the same time. But she, being 5 years younger, was informed by me. She saw everything that I was doing musically and learned from me. And so that's the connection we have, is whatever I had, she mimicked first. And then our ears are so similar, we have relative pitch that's really close. Um, and musically we think the same way, we listen to a lot of the same music, so we're informed by similar stuff. She has differences, but like um you know, as family members now in our string trio, our cellist Anna Fritz often says, uh she's like, this is a king sister thing, like you guys have a language, you're doing something right now, I don't know how to keep up with you, you're gonna have to use words to explain that to me, you know.
Right.
It's it's definitely a thing, and you can hear it and see it in any family members that are musical together. They have their own language, they can blend together well, they usually work together well.
Harmonies to me are a total mystery.
Mm,
I've never done them. I've never sang backing vocals. I've never really understood where to go.
yeah.
Like just finding your place in that. How do you know where to like just instinctually go if you have like a three-part harmony?
This is a great question, and I'm so glad you're asking.
Okay, good.
Not many people ask because there's not a lot of interest. When I grew up listening to music, I never ever sung with the melody. I don't sing the melody line of songs. I honestly don't know the lyrics of most music. Even my favorite songs, I have no idea what they're singing about. I don't hear music that way. I grew up singing only harmony. I used to make up harmony when there wasn't harmony that existed, or I'd pick out the harmony lines and sing along to that. And I did that with so many different artists' voices, and I would use my voice to mimic and to match, to blend with all these different artists growing up. That's the only way that I sung along to music. And so I learned harmony early on from just naturally going there. And harmony is very easy for me at this point. And I work, so a good example is with the Sister Strings, touring with Brandi. They're the same way. The three of us grew up just kind of exploring every aspect of the arrangement. And when we sit together, the three of us to work out harmony, it's just like boom, 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 boom. The three of us are like, oh, you go here, you go there. Your voice is better here, you go there. You do this one. And then it falls in and we can all hear harmony so well. We could make up harmony to any song you throw at us and we'll just figure it out right
Wow.
away because we grew up doing that.
Well, yeah, in the film, the Blossoms even do it. They haven't seen each other in decades.
Yes, I love that moment.
They get together in a room and like they're like, let's do the Shoop Shoop song. And immediately they all fall into the thing. And it's like, hey, it sounds pretty good. You know, we haven't done that in
No practice.
decades. Yeah. It's like, I'm just watching it. I'm like, holy shit. Like, what a gift. To me, it seems like a mental gymnastic thing, but it's got to be second nature, I guess. Okay.
It's
Okay.
just like anything else. It's just something that I did always, right? Like if you do something from such a young age, you get an instinct for it. And that's where my instinct goes. I have a harder time writing melody than I have writing harmony.
Well, you know, we were talking a lot about the industry and mental health, and the latter part of the film, almost every single performer is struggling at some point in their life with expectations. And a lot of it is them being like, hey, I've got a good voice. I've been told I should maybe step out. And some people you're like, yeah, why weren't they a household name? You know, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason. And then they were dropped, or, you know, like I said earlier, a lot of visual pressure put on the identity and how good looking they were or what they sold on a record cover sexually. And again, it just seems like a roll of the dice.
Ultimately, that is what it is. Because if anything, you can extrapolate out from this movie and recognize how much talent exists in the world, that there could be stars everywhere and that there's talent all over the place that you don't even know about. This film is just a handful of some of these great singers that we get to see what this is like. But somebody points it out in the documentary. I think it was Sting or something. It's like you can have all this talent, you know, and that you realize that's not the only thing, right? Like it's luck, it's timing, it's circumstance, it's whatever it is. You cannot gauge it. It's not a fair game. It's something that doesn't make sense, which is why this is so hard. Because why wouldn't you be famous? Like Lisa Fisher should be a solo artist and everybody should know her name. I agree, but that's not what this industry is. That's not what this game is. It's not playing by rules and it's not operating by whoever is the most talented gets the most rewards. Like it's never been that thing. So there's so much struggle around that. And this is what I've always seen. I think just where I'm at as a person, I'm attuned to people. I feel them, you know, and I see struggle and I want to be there. I want somebody to be there for me when I'm struggling and I want to be there for somebody else. And when I know the pressures of this business intimately, and there's so much that can just be said and done in this space as we're all like, I'm going to do music regardless, but I'd like to be a little bit better. I'd like to feel healthier about it. I'd like to understand what I'm walking into. I'd like, you know, somebody to be on my side and help me get through this beast. I see a healthier way. And I know people are already doing this work. It's just not as, you don't know about them as well, but there are organizations and people that are committed to doing this. And as mental health is becoming less and less taboo, it's going to be more, I think, just normalized in the near, kind of already is. Uh,
Yeah.
but I'm really interested in this particular population that I just don't think is seen by mental health professionals, by social work, for its particular needs and the particular experience we have as musicians. And in a capitalist system, how we as freelancers don't have jobs that we can just go take, right? Like there are a lot of freelancers in the country. I think of like Lyft drivers and Uber drivers. yeah, they're independent contractors, but they can also go onto an app and be like, yeah, I'm going to work today. Musicians, we don't have that luxury. Like there's just not that work out there. We're fighting really hard to get income from what we do. And struggle is all around that. There's struggle around needs not being met and mental well-being not being met. We're sensitive folks. Like
Yeah.
depression, anxiety runs high, substance use runs high, suicide is high. And I feel like it isn't focused on. It isn't focused on with a mind towards support and well-being. So yeah.
That's amazing, Kyleen. I really appreciate you putting it in those words
Thank you.
because, as anyone who's been on the road, it's especially as we get older, it's hard,
It's hard.
and being able to even form words at certain points, you're like, I can't talk. It's like,
I know.
you know,
No, I I just love that this movie focuses on the role of backing people. Like it's really focused on backing vocalists, but I love that it just brings this concept of everybody else that is on stage and the roles that everybody plays. And and I love how that's featured. It's just featured so brilliantly in this movie.
there's some great choices in it too. I feel like one of the interesting things is, at least for me as a viewer, is whenever Bruce Springsteen or Sting comes on, I'm like, get out of here. But the other thing I really loved is just out of the gate, just the stylized credit sequence at the top where they put dots over all the singers' faces that are the front people. I thought was so awesome. It was such a statement right away. I was like, yeah, that's Sam Cooke. His face is covered. It was just like so stylistically such a great way to start the message of this film.
I agree. I agree. And I'll just a little caveat I'll point out. I think when you're saying I don't want to hear Sting, I don't want to hear Bruce, I feel like what we're really seeing is patriarchy and racism also playing out in this movie. And when you get to hear the narrative of Black women talking about their role as backing vocalists and these white men talking about their role as lead artists, it's the discomfort you feel of even watching Mick Jagger or Sting or Bruce Springsteen speak. You're like, yeah, we've heard your story. I want to hear these other stories.
Yeah, even at the beginning of the film, I wrote down the quote. So the film starts with Bruce Springsteen talking while Judith Hill is like walking to a studio. He just goes, it's a bit of a walk, from back by the drummer.
Yep.
The walk to the front is complicated. Singing background vocals remains an unheralded position, So people make the leap. It's almost more of a mental leap than, the physical act of singing. It's a conceptual leap. And if you can comfortably come up in it, then you may find a spot there. And you got to have that ego. It can be a pretty long walk. And I'm like, what? It was a really clunky way. Like if the whole film was built around this kind of wisdom, I just would be like, I'm out. Because it's I know why they put him at the top. It's Bruce Springsteen. He's iconic.
Yeah.
It gets people in.
Yeah.
But I just was like, that is a really weird quote to
You're
start
right.
the film. It's so clunky. Kind of know what he's saying, but can't you just say it? Backing singers rule, because obviously he talks about the E Street Band was really trying to steal that energy they figured out. They're like that sound with the backing vocals, and they realized that it was the sound of youth. These were teenagers who were doing this stuff. Darleen Love was young.
Baby.
And I love the part where she goes, it was white backing vocal singers.
Yes.
For the majority. And she's like, we called them the readers because they couldn't do nothing without the music sitting right in front of their face. And they're like, yeah, the readers. and then the Blossoms came about. Like there were two other singers at first before Darlene came in. And they were like, we sounded really white till Darlene came in and just added like personality to it. But the film is just full of so many great stories and insights into the culture. I mean, we could just talk forever about something that's like Sweet Home Alabama.
Uh-huh.
And them going like, I don't want to sing this song.
Yeah.
And then her husband basically being like,
You got to sing this.
this will be great. And she just was like, okay, I put my protest into my performance in this song.
Exactly.
And that's just one little moment.
That's right. That's what we get. That's why I love that documentary, despite the way that it's set up with that line, and despite all this focus on these big stars and all these, guys that we're listening to talk about it. I'm there for the stories of the backing vocalists and what their experience has been like. And it's so beautifully told in that regard. And you really get to see it. Like, I feel like I'm really getting a glimpse of what their experience is like and what their thoughts are in those roles. And it's also kind of, this documentary showing me that these main artists are not even getting how much they're really giving, or how much they're getting from these backing vocalists and how dependent they are on them for a lot of their success. They don't really acknowledge it. They'll get to the point where they're like, oh, you're a star. I think of you as a star, and you're just phenomenally gifted, and you're like a freak show of talent, but they don't get. It's like there's like a block in their humility of recognizing how much they've been served in their careers and how dependent they might be on these kind of backing vocalists.
Yeah, I would say that would be my only critique of the film. These bigger stars take up a very small portion of the film.
Yeah.
Thankfully. But it is interesting that they still feel like they're kind of on, like Mick's playing Mick and Bruce is playing Bruce. But at the same time, I didn't get really anything from them. It's the story of these women and just the highs and lows. And, the fact that Darleen Love sang with Cher just this year, she's just around performing.
Yeah.
Finally got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011. It's really great to just see in the film that she just had a late period burst of work and respect.
Yep. Yeah. I've been watching that Brandi plays with Mavis Staples a lot, and I see the same thing. This is an 80-year-old woman who's out there just crushing the solo live shows, right? Like, I have so much admiration and respect and appreciation for the fact that can exist. Like, Darleen Love can still do this in some way, right? Like, there's a way.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that they still have the energy to do this despite everything that life and our society and this business has thrown at them. They're just so resilient. They are heroines, right? They are people that I admire and look up to as a guiding light in doing this work. As that my life doesn't need to look like yours, but the fact that you can do this gives me energy and momentum behind what I want to do.
Amazing.
Incredible. Yeah.
Well, Kyleen, I thank you so much for being on the show. And at the end of every episode, I ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on what we're talking about. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how many bows from the front of the stage do you give this film?
How many bows from the front of the stage?
Yeah, like you walk your way up, you're like, step aside. Is this a 1 bow film or a 10 bow film?
Okay. For me, this is a 10 bow film.
That's what I have written down here too.
Okay.
10 bows. So
10
yes.
bows. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Every single thing, even the things we don't like about it, they're important pieces of what the whole conversation is. I see everything as an educational opportunity in this movie. And just the heart and the beauty of getting to see these stories. Oh, 10. Definitely 10. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. If you haven't seen this film, what are you doing? Get to work. It's an amazing film.
Agreed.
Kylie, it was so good to see you.
You too, Chris. Thank you for having me.
You got it. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show's a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye.